year to flip the Senate. This is absolutely a historic election in so many ways. The first runoff for 2 U.S. Senate races in Georgia, and it's everything. Everything is on the line. This is going to determine the Senate and how our country is going to be able to run over the next, 2 years, but really decades to come. So historically, turnout for runoffs are very low, which is not good for Democrats. However, this year, Georgia will continue to have vote by mail available to all voters, and that can be a game changer. So our calls are going to be super important, as they have been so far. So just to catch everybody up of where we are, where things stand. During election week, as I like to call it, Democrats picked up 2 Senate seats, Colorado and Arizona. That equaled a net 1 gain because we also lost Alabama. Currently, that means Republicans have 50 seats and Democrats have 48 seats. In the case of a 50-50 split, the tie-breaking vote would go to the vice president, which in this case is Kamala Harris. So we need to get to 50, and luckily we have a chance to do so. In Georgia, there are 2 races that are on the line because neither candidate received over 50% of the vote. So now they go into a runoff. And so we need to win these 2 seats to have a chance at the Senate. And everything's on the line. So what are the 2 races? The first race is Senator David Perdue, who is a first-term Republican. He faced a super competitive challenge from John Ossoff, who is the Democratic nominee. If you'll see here, the final votes, Perdue, less than 50%, but it was over 2 million and over 400,000 votes. So Perdue won by 88,000 votes, which is a lot. The second race was really different. There were many candidates, so no one even got close to 50%. So Senator Kelly Loeffler, a Republican who was appointed to her seat last year, ran in a special election with 20 candidates on the ballot, including Doug Collins, a Republican, and Reverend Warnock, who's a Democrat. No candidate won the majority of votes, so it's a runoff between the top 2 finishers, which in this case is Reverend Warnock and Kelly Loeffler. Again, this is in January. So this is the second race we're fighting. And, I think we all know what's on the line, right? Of all the things that we could win if we had a Senate that was working for us and with us. We could prevent attacks on workers. We could ensure that the Senate was no longer making tax cuts for the 1%. We could deal with our significant issues around racism and division in our country. We could strengthen our institutions of democracy instead of dismantling them. We can actually ensure that we have real COVID relief so that when we tell people to stay home, they're not making a choice between their job and their health. We can actually do all of these things if we win. We could prevent these things. These bad things from happening. And we know that the Republican Party will do everything they can to continue on the same path that they've been on, obstructing efforts to rebuild and recover. And the Biden administration will be really, really at a severe disadvantage without winning the Senate. Their hands will be tied in a lot of important ways. And we know what this looks like, right? Because since 2018, Democrats took control of the House. They've passed multiple pieces of pro-worker legislation, including many bills that CWA has supported. However, McConnell has blocked every single progressive pro-labor, pro-worker bill. There's a bunch of images here of the different bills. So a democracy reform bill, which would have expanded voting rights, a $15 minimum wage bill, the HEROES bill, which would have provided desperately needed state and local funding, premium pay for essential workers, paid leave, the Paycheck Fairness Act, Moving Forward Act, which included our proposal for broadband, many important bills. I also think it's really important to talk about what's at stake, not only just the things that we could win if we had a Senate, but what we will definitely also lose. Over the last Republican-controlled Senate, which has the authority to approve and appoint judges in the federal court system, they have we hear this term packing the court. The Republicans have absolutely consistently been putting anti-labor, pro-corporation judges in all federal courts. So this trend has really accelerated since President Trump appointed Gorsuch and Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, but there are anti-worker judges in all levels that are making decisions every single day that impact us. And this court time and again has proven that it stands on the side of powerful corporations, not American workers. This is the Supreme Court that gave us Janus. This is the Senate that has essentially acted as a conveyor belt, sending dozens of extreme nominees that are put up by special interests to all levels of the federal bench. And many of these judges have life tenure. So this is going to have a profound impact on our law and the way that our rights are enforced or not for decades to come. And this has already happened, right? But it'll only get worse if we don't take back the Senate. So this is not just about what we can win, but it's about what else we can lose. So who are the candidates? All right, CWA has endorsed candidates. John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock both support CWA's top legislative priorities. They support the PRO Act, which we all know would strengthen unions and the rights of workers. They support ending tax breaks for companies that outsource jobs. They support COVID relief for workers and communities. And they support expanding healthcare and making sure that more people have access to healthcare and affordable healthcare, including lowering prescription drug costs. All right, so we're going to watch a video quickly about each of the candidates so everybody can get acquainted.
Well, perhaps Senator Perdue would have been able to respond properly to the COVID-19 pandemic if you hadn't been fending off multiple federal investigations for insider trading. It's not just that you're a crook, Senator. It's that you're attacking the health of the people that you represent. You did say COVID-19 was no deadlier than the flu. You did say there would be no significant uptick in cases. All the while, you were looking after your own assets and your own portfolio, and you did vote 4 times to end protections for pre-existing conditions.
All right, so we can see there as Logan put it so eloquently in the chat, zing, right? We have a really different
Well, perhaps Senator Perdue would have been able to respond properly.
Okay, awesome. So now let's learn a little bit about Warnock.
People sometimes ask me why I think a pastor should serve in the U.S. Senate. Well, the answer begins right here, where I grew up, the Kate Holmes housing projects of Savannah, Georgia. I had 11 sisters and brothers. Our parents taught us the value of hard work. Inspired by them, I graduated college, earned a PhD degree, and 14 years ago, I became the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church.
Pastor of one of the most prominent churches in America, Raphael Warnock preaches the gospel and uses it as a platform for change.
Dr. King called it the drum major instinct. Warnock has it and a sense of his place in this place.
I'm proud of my work, fighting to expand access to affordable health care, protecting the dignity of workers and the right to vote. I'm Raphael Warnock, and I realize that a kid growing up here today and struggling families all across Georgia have it harder now than I did back then. That's got to change, and it will. That's why I approve this message. People sometimes ask me why I think a pastor should serve in the U.S.
Awesome. So I don't know about you guys, but that totally fires me up to fight for such really strong candidates. These are not only people, this is like not just about winning the Senate, but I really, I think these are really great candidates who will support our needs in the Senate. And on the other side, what we have are anti-labor candidates, incumbents, David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. They refuse to support the PRO Act, which we all know is a critical piece of legislation. They don't want to end tax breaks for outsourcing companies. In fact, Perdue voted to cut the tax rate for companies that incentivizes outsourcing of jobs. Both have voted against expanding paid sick leave to millions left out of the CARE Act. They refuse to support the HEROES Act, which provides really critically needed funding to state and local governments to provide all the services and protections we need. like in a healthcare, in a global pandemic. And Perdue voted 4 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Loeffler voted for a judge with a history of attacking Obamacare. These are not people who are fighting for us, right? So David Perdue was elected in 2014. He never held office before his U.S. Senate run, and he was the former CEO of Reebok and Dollar General stores. During a disposition as the CEO of Dollar General, Perdue proudly claimed to have spent most of his career outsourcing. And when he was asked about it during his 2014 Senate run, he said, "Defend it, I'm proud of it." So that is how he feels about moving our jobs out of the country. Loeffler was never elected. She was appointed to replace the retiring senator in December 2019. And in early 2020, after attending a senators only briefing on the coronavirus, so before the pandemic exploded in the US, she used that information to sell millions of dollars worth of stock before the financial markets crashed as COVID-19 cases were spiking. This is like lowest of the low. All right, so how are we gonna win? What are we gonna do? Ooh. So what we know, runoffs are typically low voter turnout and they tend to favor Republicans. But this year, Georgia turned blue in the presidential election for the first time since 1992, and turnout skyrocketed by at least 1 million since 2016. Biden's win can be attributed to the youth vote, the majority Black communities, particularly in the suburbs of Atlanta and Savannah, and major pushes over the past year to register new voters. And we can be really excited because Georgia has changing demographics which really favor Dems, and there's over 23,000 teenagers who were not eligible to vote in the November 3rd election, but will be eligible to vote in the January 5th election. And what we know about those voters is that they tend to sway more heavily Democratic. So a lot of the work is not only just turning out our base, but also registering new voters and making sure that those folks get to the polls. And we know that this has already worked. There are lots of organizations that have been doing this work. In fact, 20% of Georgia's votes from this past election were from voters aged 18 to 29, which is higher than the national average of 17%. So we know that the youth vote is important. We know that they're already engaged in Georgia, and we know that we can get those folks to the polls. We also know that there's going to be a lot of money, as Bob said, gazillion dollars put into this election. It's expected to be $1 billion spent in the runoffs. Anti-labor PACs have already reserved significant airtime. You can see on this slide the significant disparity between how much money is poured into airtime for these anti-labor candidates versus our candidates. Top Republican super PACs, allies of McConnell, are dumping a lot of money, about $80 million. We're up against a lot of money in this fight. So what does this all mean? This means that we need to win. This is going to be close. It is going to be hard. Every single vote will count, and we need to do this by registering new voters and turning out our base. That is the way we win this. All right, so key information that you all need to know. For the runoffs, Georgia voters have 3 ways to vote. So due to COVID-19, Georgia expanded voting options to include vote by mail without an excuse. So you can apply either online, by mail, or in person at the County Board of Registrar's office. You can send your ballot by mail. You can drop it off at the County Board of Registrar's office or at an early in-person location. Voters can vote in person at designated locations in their county, and counties set up the days, times, and locations for early in person. So every county might be different. Voters need a valid photo ID when they go to cast their ballots. Super important. Voters can vote on election day. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And again, they need a valid photo ID. So, and again, we'll be sending all of this information out, but just to get folks kind of acquainted with how voting works in Georgia. So these are the key dates. On November 18th, vote by mail ballots started to go out. So this is another one of those situations where the election day is already happening. It's already election day. Votes are already happening. Applications are already being accepted. December 7th is the last day to register to vote. So again, all those new folks who just turned 18 and can register can vote by register by December 7th. December 14th is when early voting starts, and then January 5th is election day. So these are key dates that we will be sending out. All right, so this is all about turnout. In addition to our member mobilization, we wanted to talk to you. District 1 will be partnering with District 6 and IUE CWA to co-lead the effort targeting Black voters and voters of color in collaboration with the Fair Fight and the New Georgia Project, which many of you probably heard of, Stacey Abrams' organization. District 3, 4, 7, and 9 are co-leading efforts to turn out labor, and organizing in the public sector are doing turnout in public higher education workers in key state campuses. So what's the schedule? Again, we're working with Stacey Abrams' organizations, New Georgia Project, and Fair Fight to reach out to voters of color in key areas of Georgia. Georgia's population is growing, it's becoming increasingly diverse, and that's expanding and changing the electorate. It's a major reason why we were able to win Georgia and turn Georgia blue in the presidential. So we need to bring out new voters, we need to combat rampant voter suppression in Georgia, and we need to register new folks. So D1, I know we are up to the task. Everyone did a phenomenal job in the last phone banks, recruited hundreds of volunteers for our weekly phone banks to Pennsylvania. I don't know about you all, but I feel so good about the work we did there and the fact that Pennsylvania was such a key state. I know that we are up to the task here in order to give the Biden administration a chance to do all of the things we need done and take out, ditch Mitch, get him gone. So what that means for all of us is we need to recruit. I know everybody's tired. We've been working on elections for months, but this is no time to let off the gas. So I will hope all of you will be sending out this link to recruit volunteers for our phone banks. They're super fun, right? We always dance at the end. We play music. It's a good time. Talk to some voters in Georgia. If you've been on one, then you know it's a good time. Bring your friends, bring your family. I always bring, some friends, and we'd love to see you there, and definitely make sure to circulate this link and get folks to sign up so that they get the Zoom. And just to remind folks, the schedule from now until Election Day is going to be Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We are starting tomorrow night, Tuesday, from 6 to 8 p.m. If you sign up on that Mobilize link, you will get all the information. We won't be phone banking this Wednesday, but we'll pick it up next week, the Tuesday and Wednesday from here on out. And again, we'll be working in Georgia to register new voters and get them to the polls. A lot of information, a lot of work to do, but all good work, all good fun we're gonna have. I am going to open it up for questions. Awesome.
Becca and Halen and anyone else who can answer, there's been a few questions in the chat. Do you guys want to read them, or is it easier if I read them to you?
Yeah, I think if you can read them, that would be great.
First question from Pete that I saw, there might be others. Will we be calling people on our side or just anyone?
That's a good question. Oh.
Yeah, so the voter registration calls are nonpartisan calls. As Becca mentioned, we're working with Stacey Abrams' organization, and the goal is to turn out our base, right? So they will have modeled a universe of people who, once registered, would be voting for us. But those calls are strictly nonpartisan. We cannot mention anything about candidates. So we will be doing that probably twice, because the registration deadline is December 7th. And after that, we will transition to, again, either nonpartisan turnout calls, where we tell voters just to come out and vote. We will not mention anything about the candidates, or working with Fair Fight, which is the other organization, we'll do sort of the traditional voter contact where we will talk only to people on our side. So similar with the presidential election, the sort of opportunity to do persuasion, meaning bringing people who may be undecided to, is like very, very slim. Like it's not worthwhile. It's not that many people who are undecided at this point. So we'll definitely focus, short answers, focuses, we will focus on talking to people on our side.
And then the other question that was posted in the chat from Susan, is this volunteer or will we get paid?
It's volunteer work because we were working, it's not technically an independent expenditure, but it's treated like an independent expenditure. So as Becca mentioned, different parts in CWA all across the country are covering different groups. So District 3 is primarily focusing on the member-to-member part, working with the campaigns, and everything outside of that is on the sort of what we would call independent side, where we are not coordinating. And we cannot pay volunteers for this, and any sort of lost time would be considered a contribution to the campaign, which would be reportable. Were there more questions?
There's no more questions in the chat.
Okay, opening up to questions. Either, post in chat or raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, I don't see any questions. We will share, is it possible to see the slides? Yes, we will share the slides with everyone who joined today. We will also share with you talking points and graphics that you can share on your social media. We know that a lot of you guys did this during the presidential campaign, and we know from like the link where people joined that a lot of people joined our phone banks because they clicked on something that you have posted on your personal Facebook about our phone bank. So please keep doing that. However, we can share the information, and as Becca mentioned, everyone's welcome, right? You don't have to be a CWA member to join our phone banks. And so we will, share materials for you that will help you talk in your workplaces to your coworkers about why it's important to join these.
Yeah, and to answer Jim's question, we will be sending out template emails and texts that you all can send and forward to recruit for this.
Great. All right. If there are no more questions, is text banking being done? Yes, that's a good question. We are definitely trying to put together a text banking program. It will be a little different than phone banking in that we will recruit from all of you and from all of the activists we work with, a group to put together a texting group. And that group, will be like 15, 20 people or so. And these texters will get assigned batches of texts to send out. So it will be not like on events that we schedule like the phone banks. But the groups that we're working with are still in the process of putting together the texting program. So that will probably happen in the next 2 weeks. And we will reach out when we have more information about that.
I have one question, this is Trisha. Can we get information about people in Georgia and the issues they're facing, just in case as we're talking to people, it's helpful, like local information?
Yes, that's Great. A good point. Yes, we'll definitely have more information about the universe of people we're calling, right? And, what issues, like be it healthcare or, other issues they care about. That's a good point. All right, if there's no more question, then I have one important question for all of you guys. Can we do this? Are you guys in? Give me a thumbs up if you're in. Woohoo! All right, thank you so much.
Is Stacey Abrams coming on tonight?
No, Stacey Abrams is not coming on tonight, but we're working very hard.
I thought she was coming on.
No, we would have told you if we had Stacey Abrams as a guest tonight, but we're working very hard on having a national event, for the entire union, where we're trying to have both John Ossoff and the Reverend Warnock and Stacey Abrams on a call. But as you can imagine, she's in high demand right now, but I think, she really, really appreciates labor chipping in. So we're working hard on making this happen. So stay tuned for that. And we will also make sure to have fun guest speakers, for all of our regular phone banks. All right.
Don't forget to sign up for tomorrow. It's our first phone bank.
Tomorrow's our first phone bank. Voter registration, we tested out the system last week. It's kind of same as we did during the presidential. So many of you will know this. They also work with Through Talk. So for those of you who've done this, you know the system. And, it's kind of good to be back in the groove.
Georgia.
All right.
Great job, Halen. Great job, Becker and Logan and Rachel and District 1 and everybody else. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. See you on our phone banks.
Woohoo.